of Kitty and Les because that had some real drama with it. And when we first met Les, we went to the Gold Bar in Santa Barbara, the Gold Bar, which was kind of a downtown prominent place for people to eat and to drink. And we were sitting at a table, and Les and one of his buddies were sitting up at the bar.
You said Santa Barbara. Do you mean Helena?
Helena, yeah. And Les took off his cap and threw it over at Kitty. She promptly grabbed it and hung on to it.
He had never met her?
No.
He was flirting.
Yes, and so he came over, they finally came over, and she wouldn't give him his cap. She just held on to it, looked at him. Her sparkling black eyes, you know. So it ended up that they finally walked home with us. He and his buddy walked down to Logan Street with us and turned around and went back out to camp. And so then that's when she started kind of seeing Les. And he came around, and then one time he and his buddy Red went over to the 4K ranch where Riley was working. I guess they probably took the train down to wherever they get off the train down there, and went there, and they had a whale of a good time feeding cows and pitching hay and having a marvelous time there visiting.
Did Les know Frenchie?
Oh, just casually.
They trained together in the commando unit.
Well, yeah, but they were in a different battalion and so forth.
Les was an American?
Yeah. But they were all mixed together. If you watch the Devil's Brigade, you'll see what they did together. They became one unit then.
Did the Devil's Brigade accurately reflect some of what you experienced up there and saw?
Well, not in Helena. In Helena, they were nice, just common, ordinary, nice boys. But we'd hear about their training sometimes, and sometimes they would tell us a little bit about this commando stuff they were learning, because that was kind of new to a lot of them. And of course, the parachute jumping and the long marches that they had to get in shape, and the skiing was a part of their whole training.
Did they know what they were training for?
They thought they were training, probably training to go to Norway. But
to do what?
To keep the Germans out of Norway. Capture that. Keep the Germans out. But that fell apart. And so they first went to Ada, up to the Aleutians, and spent some time up there. And then came back down. And I think that's when they went to... Kitty joined the service after they shipped out. She went down to Florida. Was training in Florida with the Waves. And they ended up in Vermont for a time being, and so she went up to Vermont, and she and Les were married up in Vermont, and then he went overseas. And I have no idea just exactly what they did overseas, but they ended up in Italy. And he was killed on Anzio Beach. He jumped out of a Jeep and landed on a mine. So he's buried in Anzio Cemetery.
Where was he from?
Washington. This state. He had a sister that lived in Las Vegas, I think. But he worked in the he worked in timber and stuff up here in Washington.
According to research, the men that were pulled into this unit had been lumberjacks, game wardens. They all had backgrounds in the woods and surviving harsh conditions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were no sissies among them. If they did, they didn't last too long.
You said that he knew he was not coming back?
Yes, this was based on his training and what he knew that they were. He knew what they were scheduled to do. He was a sergeant, and as a sergeant, of course, he was. I mean, around us, he was nonsensical kid. But as soon as that came time for him to be a soldier again, he was all business. Top sergeant.
They were pretty elite, weren't they?
Yes, they were. And when they left Helena, they had a parade, and everybody turned out for the parade. They just loved him.